Okay, here we go. So, hi everyone, welcome. This is Diversity in Engineering's guest speaker series, and we are joined today by the lovely Meghana Valupadas. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the University of Alberta and Edmonton region is situated on Treaty 6 territory, traditional lands of Métis and First Nation people. Yes, we are going to go over a couple questions with Meghana, and then at the end, we will be having a little bit of time to go over some audience questions. So feel free to type it in the chat. You can also unmute yourself if you're comfortable with that, but just keep in mind that we are recording this to put on social media at a later time. Awesome, I am so excited. So Meghana, we're gonna start off with how did you get to where you are today in terms of your career?
Oh, that's a big question.
Real
Wow.
big question.
Oh my gosh, where to start? Okay, when I was younger, I wanted to be a million things. I wanted to be a dolphin trainer. I wanted to be an astronaut, an astrophysicist, a doctor, like circus performer. I wanted to be everything. And when I went into high school, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. There were a lot of things that I had a passion for, particularly community activism and volunteering, but I didn't really know exactly where my career would go. In my last year of school, when it was time to figure out, if you're going to do post-secondary, if you're going to do something else, I decided to follow the post-secondary route, but I didn't know what program to enroll in. And then I remember it was in my high school physics class. This was the day of early admissions to the U of A, where you could apply earlier than like the actual application date to see if you would get conditional acceptance into the U of A. And there were some guys in my physics class and they were all talking, and I asked them, what they applied for, and they were all like, yeah, we applied for engineering. And I was like, oh cool, like maybe that's something I might do too. I say that because I actually did think about it a bit. My dad's an engineer, his dad was an engineer. They, family pressure, they were kind of pushing me that way to see what it would be like. And these guys were like, you don't really look like an engineer. Like, we wouldn't pay you for an engineer. And then so I ran right over to the library, which was where the admissions people were. And I said, put me down for engineering. And then when it came time to actually start university, I still hadn't figured out what I wanted to do, but I was enrolled in engineering. So I was like, you know what? Let's give it a try. Maybe I can marry my two passions. Well, not really two passions. I guess my passion for community activism and engagement, and the thing that I was good at, which was math and science and trying really hard in school. And then, so I did my first year of engineering, which tends to be the hardest year for a lot of reasons, because, university is a new kind of way of studying. You go from like a small classroom size to a huge classroom size. It's hard for a variety of reasons, and actually got through and made some friends, and the work wasn't exactly, riveting, but I didn't mind it. And I was finding more and more ways that I could interweave engineering into community work. And a big piece of that was through looking at what type of engineering I wanted to do, which was civil engineering. And I figured I wanted to do civil engineering because it's the most relatable to community things. It's infrastructure, it's transportation, it's waterways, it's buildings, it's literally everything that people interact with. And I was like, I love people, I love my community, I love building community. This is a really great way to marry the two together. And then so through university, I did my civil engineering degree, trying to continually find ways to bring those pieces together, and being more validated about why I was in engineering every time someone would ask me, why did I choose engineering when I clearly had other passions? And I was like, because the two shouldn't be mutually exclusive. We need more engineers who are invested in their community, and we need more people in their community who have knowledge of technical things. And then so I did my co-op terms. So I worked during school, finished my degree, and then decided to take a leap of faith and actually moved to Calgary for a year and a half to be with my partner and network there, do a job there. And then COVID-19 hit and my job came to an end, as many people's did. And I was like, okay, what's next for me? And I ended up landing a job here in Edmonton, and then took that opportunity. And that's how I found myself, I guess, in my career where I am today.
Awesome. And yeah, that's so interesting because I know you came to Edmonton like 2 weeks ago. So this has been like a very, very recent career shift for you.
Yes, very much
Um,
so.
I'm super excited to have you today. For those of you who don't know, Meghana was one of the co-founders of Diversity in Engineering. So I'm really excited to be chatting about diversity and inclusion. And I'm also gonna like we're gonna dive into intersectionality a bit if you're okay with that.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Sweet. So I know you talked about this a little bit, but what inspired you to pursue engineering? I know that when you were in high school, you were kind of like not so sure about it, but what do you remember that moment when you were like, yep, this is for me?
That's a tough one because for me it wasn't really a moment where I figured engineering was for me. To be honest, throughout a lot of my degree, I was always doubting myself about, did I choose the right career choice? Like, is engineering really the field for me? I don't look like the people in my class. I don't look like the industry people I'm meeting. We don't have the same kind of thoughts. Is this really for me? And I had a lot of doubts for a very long time. And to be honest, I'm like working as an engineer and I still doubt it sometimes. I'm like, is this the career for me? But the moments that validate it is, like I said, when people ask me, like, why are you in engineering? Or you don't seem like an engineer. And that's when I'm like, yeah, I am. I did the degree. I do the engineering work. What makes you think that? And that's kind of what sticks out to me is like why I am in engineering. Yes, it's because I have a passion for building community and doing that through my technical skills and trying to bring a lot of social advocacy into engineering because you don't really see it that much when you think of engineers. You don't really think of like the people who are designing a community and decide whether it's going to be an accessible community or whether it's going to be a community that's walkable, sustainable. You don't think about that, but engineers, we have the power to do that. And then so bringing more social awareness into engineering, every time like someone asks me like, why are you an engineer? You should have gone into something else. It just validates more and more like, no, I think this is the place to be because we shouldn't be telling people that you fit in this certain box, so you should go into this certain career. Like anyone with any type of interest should be able to go into any type of career as long as, they have good intentions and a passion for it.
I love your response to that because I know even asking high school students, why did you choose engineering? It's really hard to put that type of pressure on someone. And I know a lot of students might be questioning their decision as well, but it's so good to know that everyone belongs anywhere they choose to be and that they can create their own path within this super broad study and field of study.
Definitely.
Awesome. I love this next question. These next two, how do you define engineering?
Ooh, that's these are tough questions. I applaud you for asking the big ones. I define engineering in a couple ways. It is innovation. So, looking at something and thinking, how can we do this differently? How can we do this better? And really defining what better means. So, challenging what better means. Does it mean better for different communities? Does it mean better in an economic sense? Does it mean better just in a, how can we push the bounds of technology? That's what engineering is. Engineering is also thinking outside of the box, which is very similar to innovation, but it's being creative and using the right side of your brain, looking at something in non-traditional ways. Engineering can be meticulous. It can be, calculating. It can be a lot of things. One word that always comes to mind is building. Engineering truly is building, and it's building in a number of ways. And I think as we see the engineering career and industry get more diverse and more inclusive, we can see that it's building socially as well. And so yeah, that's what I would say engineering is. And even putting a definition to engineering, I used to ask people that too, like, what is an engineer? What do they do? And I say that it's someone who's kind of somewhere between like an artist and an inventor and a scientist, and you smush them all together and you get an engineer.
I love that. I think that would be the perfect way to describe it to a kid. Um, this next question as well, how would you define success?
Success. That, it's interesting because like when I get asked these questions, sometimes I do have like a bit of a canned response because I do this a lot. And then sometimes in moments like this, I question my canned response because I'm like, what is it really? What is success? I think that truly success is, I don't want to sound cliche, but success is happiness when you can find contentment and fulfillment. I think that's success. I think from a social standpoint, success is when everyone feels like they're included. No one feels like they are on the outskirts or they can't speak their mind or they can't be part of something. Like everyone feels like a community. That's what success looks like to me or feels like to me. Um, Success is also, I think, being able to overcome the self-doubts. And that comes from a lot of things. It comes from becoming more confident in yourself. It comes from your community supporting you. It comes from finding value in what you bring to the table. So I think that's what success is. I kind of jumped around a little bit there, but it's hard to define success. Because have I been successful up to this point in life? I would say so. But do I truly know what success is? I don't know. I don't know. These are like very existential, like philosophical questions.
Yeah, I feel like honestly, around this time, midterm season, people are getting burnt out and they're starting to question everything. I know that's what I'm experiencing at least. I'm like, oh, am I doing the right thing? Am I successful? Am I going to find work in next term? Am I going to pass these classes? So I know that there's a lot of worry, but I'm really glad you mentioned how um, like social aspects and how everyone feeling included is a part of success. And we really hope to strive towards that goal here at Divi and at the U of A in general. So I'm glad you touched on that. Alrighty, let's see here. What do you enjoy most about your work?
Ooh, okay. Define, I'm asking you to define something. What
All
aspect
right,
of work should I touch on?
awesome. I think maybe let's talk about the social work that you do and the more technical side so we get a little bit of contrast.
Definitely. So I'll talk a little bit about the social initiatives that I've been a part of. So Divi was a huge one for me. So myself and my co-founder Selma, we created Divi when we were both, or I was in school and she was actually working as an EIT, reflecting on how she wished that university and engineering in particular was more inclusive, particularly when she was back in school. She wished that. So we worked on that together with a group of incredible people who put their skills and their time into creating this group and trying to figure out what exactly would be its purpose. How would it interact with other clubs and with the faculty and with the students, and how would we be a body that is a place where people can come to, share their grievances or share, issues that they're passionate about or things that they want to see change in engineering, but how can we also affect change? So how can we be that segue for those thoughts? And then, so yeah, Divi was a huge part of my degree. During that time, I was also involved in a couple other things. So the Women's Advocacy Voice of Edmonton is a committee that advises City Council on gender-based issues. That group came out of the need for women's voices on council. Unfortunately, we just don't see as many women being elected into council positions, which is something that we need to do as a city, is elect more politicians who represent diverse backgrounds. But at the time, there was only one woman on council, so the council decided to put together a body of women who would be able to speak to gender-based issues. And so that was something that I was also involved in. So the question was my favorite part of work, right?
Yeah.
So my favorite part of work is definitely meeting different kinds of people through these initiatives, because I find that I learn so much. So when I am part of these initiatives, I recognize that I only know my experience, and my experience is very limited to what I have been through and what I've seen. And so the more I get to interact with other people, hear their experiences, hear their thoughts and perspectives, the more, I don't know, the more the world opens up, and the more I don't know. It's just a good feeling. It's a good feeling when you get to hear other people's perspectives, when other people's perspectives challenge your perspectives and your worldview, and you're able to accept that you have room to grow. And I say you as in like me. Like I have room to grow. I have room to learn new things, and maybe what I thought before wasn't the whole picture, and now I'm hearing other people's perspectives, and it's like little pieces of a puzzle. It's becoming a lot clearer what the bigger picture is, and we build it together just through hearing each other's experiences. So that's one of my favorite things, is meeting people and hearing their stories. um, my favorite part of work as an engineer is definitely public engagement, again, for that reason. Marrying the two, so the technical pieces that the engineers know and that we are trained to understand with what the public needs. And that's why I went into civil engineering, because we deliver things that are based on community needs. So, going to open houses, we don't really have those as much anymore because of COVID, but doing open houses or engaging with different communities and trying to get an understanding of like, what is important to you? Why are you so riled up about this particular issue? Or why does the community feel so strongly about this particular issue? What is the need there? And how can we as engineers try to fulfill that need, while also taking into account things like, the vision of where Edmonton is going as a city, trying to take into account things like, okay, like maybe one part of the community wants this, but another part wants this. So how can we make everyone happy and fulfilled? And how do we make this project successful where everyone feels happy with it? So those are probably my favorite parts of work. And again, when people ask me why I went into engineering and I say these are my favorite parts of work, again, I get the question of, okay, well, why'd you go into engineering? And I'm like, because this is one of the most important parts of engineering, is like, can we translate our technical knowledge and skills to the public? Because in the end, who are we innovating for? We're innovating for, non-engineers to use the things that we create and use what we design, and hopefully for them to enjoy it. So yeah, that's my favorite part.
That's incredible. Community involvement and community service is such a huge aspect of engineering. And I it's just so incredible to be able to learn about someone else's perspective. I think that's one of the most uh, incredible gifts that you can give to someone, is to listen to what they have to say. Incredible. I love chatting with you so much. It's been so long.
This makes me so happy. And I say this whole story thing ironically, because right now I'm like talking at you folks and you're hearing my story. But like, it's such a good feeling to hear other people's stories. And I don't know, like I said, it opens up your world a bit to things that you didn't know. And that's fun.
Definitely. And what I love about diversity in engineering as a group is that my team members challenge me to think in different ways. And they challenge me and they bring up issues and topics that I was not aware of. So, for instance, I watched the Mulan movie, um, which came out in like, I don't know, September or something, which I loved, but I wasn't aware of all the issues that had to do with the movie itself. Are you familiar with the new Mulan movie?
So I actually didn't watch it because of those reasons. But like, so I can't really speak from an educated place about like what the movie had in it. I heard what it lacked, but besides that, no, I couldn't speak to the actual movie and what I thought of it.
Yeah, so I would recommend for anyone who is watching this video later on to do a bit of research onto that topic, because it's really quite interesting to learn about. But yes, moving on, the big question here, why is diversity and inclusion in engineering important to you? And I would really like to know if you're comfortable sharing your more personal stories with regards to this question.
Yeah. So I'll start with kind of like the broad answer. So why diversity and inclusion in engineering is so important is kind of going back to that puzzle piece analogy. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And if you're not able to hear different perspectives, see things, from people of different backgrounds who've had different experiences, you're not able to pull together the full picture. So if you're doing something like building a sidewalk, if you don't know who you're building that sidewalk for, like what different levels of abilities there are, like what demographics are traversing that sidewalk, you won't be able to build a sidewalk that's really able to fulfill the need of all the people who are going to be using it. And I speak to sidewalks because I'm a civil engineer, but literally in every aspect of engineering, if you are delivering something that's going to be used by people, it's really important for people who have different perspectives to be contributing to that, because what I create will be something that I think is the best. But then when someone else comes in and says, like, have you considered this? Because from my perspective, that's something that I've needed. That just makes what I'm creating better, and it makes it more usable for everyone, and it fills, more needs. So that's why it's so important. And engineers, we have such an important role in society because we literally build things that people will use. But it's so important that we're able to, because if you have a room that all has the same perspectives, then you're never going to know what you're missing. But then if you have a room of people who all bring in different perspectives and different backgrounds and different skills even and different traits, then you can start to piece together, how can we make this even better by pulling all of these skill sets together. And again, it's innovating, you're thinking outside of the box, you're gathering different perspectives, you're pushing what you thought you knew, so you're pushing boundaries. And so that's why it's so important. And diversity takes all different forms. It can be diversity of like ethnicity, it can be gender identity, expression, it can be ability. And it can even be things like whether you did co-op or traditional, or whether you have a mechanical and a civil and an electrical engineer in a room. Like, diversity comes in so many forms, but you need a ton of it, so that you can create solutions that are able to work for all different kinds of people. And so that's why it's important. And I guess like throughout my degree, that's something that I definitely did see a lack of, was advocating for more diversity in a room. People seem to be content if everyone had the same perspectives and opinions. And that's something that as an engineer, I didn't think really belonged in our type of work, because we need people who are going to bring in different perspectives, because if we all think the same, then we're not innovating, we're not pushing. And while I was in school, there were a lot of reasons why diversity and inclusion came up. Part of it comes from a personal kind of piece. Like, I am an Indian woman, the daughter of immigrants. I am queer, and I am a very short person. So in a lot of ways, I don't look like an engineer, and I didn't see a lot of pieces of my identity reflected in industry or in the people who'd come talk to us about engineering and what it's like to be an engineer. And so a big part of me knew that there were other people who felt that way too, and that we could band together as a community, and push for more representation, so that people like me wouldn't drop out of engineering. And then, hopefully right now and in the future, there'll be some other person who identifies with, a trait that I have and says, hey, like, she did it and she's an engineer now, and she looks like me and she sounds like me, and she has, this trait that I have, and maybe I can be an engineer too. And so it came from kind of like a personal, like, I didn't see that, and I want other people to be able to see themselves reflected in engineering if they want to be an engineer. And then another part of it came from the atmosphere of engineering, at the U of A, and maybe this isn't really the case this year because of COVID, maybe that's a good thing, but in a lot of engineering schools across Canada, it's a very masculine culture. It's very masculine, heavy on the drinking. There are some really inappropriate chants that are considered tradition. And we're in 2020 now. And it's like, who do these traditions benefit? They certainly don't benefit most of the population of engineering. And we really need to think of some new traditions. We need to think of ways to, again, make sure everyone who's in this program feels included and feels like they have a place, and that engineering is this community where they feel like they can contribute regardless of what they look like. And in addition, that what they look like and what they sound like and their traits will be considered, good things, like advantages, like they're of what they bring to the table. They don't have to like hide part of themselves to fit in. And so that's kind of why it came up as something that was so important. And myself and my co-founder Selma, we got talking to the previous Associate Dean of Outreach, Anya Ulrich, and she and Professor Leanne Lefsrud, who were both of the Faculty of Engineering. Actually, Dr. Lefsrud is still with the faculty. They were our champions developing Divi, helping us make sure that we had a voice at the faculty level too, because we were trying to create systemic change. So change that would be able to trickle down through all the programs, change that started at the top, that would make its way so that, people who were in engineering felt the diversity and the inclusion through the programming and through what the faculty was able to offer. It wasn't just, a student group trying to fill that gap.
Yeah, I just want to say a huge thank you for taking on such a huge responsibility of co-founding Divi, because personally, the course of my life has changed because of this group, and I'm so grateful that we met, and I'm so grateful that I attended the 2018 LGBTQ plus representation in STEM panel. It's so incredible, and I just want you to know that your goals of, hoping that diversity and systemic change trickles down throughout the years, it is happening, and I'm happy to say that the faculty is becoming more and more inclusive.
That is so great to hear. And, that sounds like we are being successful. I do want to shout out the fact that, while it was Selma and I who came up with the initial idea and reached out to our champions, after that, it was a group of folks. It was a group of folks who got together. We got together every week to pull together what this group would look like. Like I said, having perspectives at the table where Selma and I saw certain issues in engineering, but then when we pulled a group of people together who were also passionate about inclusion and diversity and equity, we started to hear things that we hadn't thought of, and it just made the group's mandate even stronger because we were able to pull in all these different experiences and different reasons why Divi should be a thing. So I really have to shout out that it was such a collective effort. We did a lot of the grunt work. We applied to be a club, and we had to figure out a lot of the red tape and the bureaucracy of the U of A and talk to members of faculty and get buy-in and do things like that. But really the meat of what Divi is and what it was built on was a big collective effort from a lot of people.
Totally. So I'll just take this opportunity right now. Shout out to all the Divi team members and shout out to all of our past members. It's just been so incredible. And when COVID is over, we're going to host a huge party for every single one of us so we can just mingle and get to know each other. I would love that.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing.
Awesome. So touching on a little bit of diversity and inclusion, did you experience any obstacles in your career because of the fact that you are different?
I would say so. And it ranged from things that were blatant to things that are, things like microaggressions. And for folks who might be unaware, a microaggression is something, an action or something verbal that is discriminatory towards, a group or a member of a certain group. But it's not as overt as say saying something that is blatantly racist that you can point out and say oh, that was racist, that was sexist. It's something that has a bit, that could be defended. I'll give an example of a microaggression would be something oh, did you really let a girl do better than you at sports? That's a microaggression because it's something that doesn't outrightly say girls aren't good at sports or shouldn't be good at sports, but it implies that women shouldn't be good at sports. And I say that because in my engineering career, I faced a lot of microaggressions. And I only speak to my experience and what I've been through, but it's been, microaggressions, anything from, are you just going to let the boys do your homework? This was when I was thinking of going into engineering, and I was like, well, no, because I got into engineering too, which means I am smart enough to do my own homework. Things like you don't look like an engineer, or you're too pretty to be an engineer. You need to wear glasses so people will actually take you seriously. To things that were overt and uncomfortable. In one of my workplaces, I did a presentation and a man came up to me and pinched me on the waist and told me I did a great job at that presentation. He also told me one day that I looked like a little schoolgirl. I've had friends who have been on co-op terms and who have faced really, really horrible situations that I won't get into right now because that's their stories, but that have faced really uncomfortable situations with, unfortunately, male coworkers and male supervisors where their safety was in jeopardy. And so we face barriers like that. And I faced barriers like that in my career. I've also faced barriers with things running for a position and wondering if I didn't get the position because I don't look the part. Or, if the guy beside me who looks like the typical engineer, people took him more seriously than they did me. or, being in a room and lowering my voice or wearing more masculine or androgynous clothing because I'm worried about being pegged as being too feminine. Or and here I am rambling, but being at like after a meeting at work where all the guys will sit around while the women get up and clear all the lunch plates and things like that, and just watching the guys sit at the table and not even thinking to help, things like that. So there have been issues, there have been barriers, there have been things that are blatantly sexist or racist or ageist or homophobic that I've heard either said to me, said to coworkers, said to friends, which sucks. Even developing Divi, we definitely face barriers, because it was a couple years ago, surprisingly. Like, it's still like very, very recent. There are a lot of folks who just don't see the value in raising up other people and creating a more inclusive environment, because there is still this unfortunate belief that if you give power to one group, it takes power away from another group. And it's like, no, that's not the case. We can all be at the top together. We can all support one another. And so that was almost a challenge, when we were developing Divi, to have these tough conversations with people about why this group was even important, why these initiatives were important, why the stories of all these people who I just mentioned who have had really unfortunate experiences, really, I'm not going to swear, but really bad experiences, why those experiences are really valid and not okay. Like, why we can't just accept that as the norm, like that's just engineering. It's like, no, I don't want to go into a profession where that is considered the norm. I find that horrendous. I think that we can do better, and I think that we need to expect better. So a little bit of a rant there, but have faced barriers. We'll probably continue to face barriers. I'm young. I'm still figuring out how to work through those barriers as best that I can. But one thing that I am really happy about is that through creating Divi, we have just created this network of people who really believe in each other and are here to support each other. People who are farther along in their engineering careers, and people who are, considering an engineering career or maybe left an engineering career, who are all rooting for each other. So even though there are barriers, through doing this kind of work, I've realized more and more that there are people who are in your corner and who will always be in your corner. You just have to find them and then support each other.
Awesome. Well, I'm so happy that you are in my corner. I'm just so honored that I can always come to you if I have questions or concerns. And it's such a good feeling to have such a supportive group of friends and colleagues at school and in work. All right, let's see what else we have. Do you think that you are where you thought you would be in your career? And what would you do differently if you had to restart?
Ooh, am I where I thought I would be? Well, I'm definitely not a circus performer, nor am I a dolphin trainer. So did I settle? Maybe. But I think I am in where I thought I would be in my career, in the sense that right now I've graduated, I'm in EIT, I'm working in Edmonton, I'm doing engineering work. That was kind of where I hoped to be. In the future, like a little bit farther future from now, I would love to run for council. So ask me in like 10 years if I am where I want to be, and hopefully that, where I am might be a little bit different. But I am where I want to be, in the sense that out of engineering, when I went into engineering, I was very, very, oh, thank you, Jade. That is so kind. When I went into engineering, I was very overwhelmed. I had gone from, a high school that was very small, where I did feel like top dog. I was on student council. I was involved in a million things. I felt very confident in myself and my skills. And when I started engineering, I kind of put that all aside, and I thought, I'll just skate by, I'll get through. And then after engineering, I'll get back to being confident in myself and making a difference. I just need to push through. And I am very happy in the fact that I didn't let my degree or my self-doubt stop me from trying to make a difference in engineering, because I feel like it would have been really, really easy for me to just look at what engineering was and say, okay, that's it, and just get through it. And then wonder about whether it could have made a difference. But instead, I tried to put my foot down and say, Kate, like, how can I bring Meghana to engineering? How can I make this my experience? And if that means trying to change what engineering is about, let's do it. Let's do the big things. So I'm very proud of that. And that I didn't expect to do that in university. I didn't expect to be trying to make as big of a change as I did. Because, like I said, engineering overwhelmed me. I thought engineering would take me over, but instead, Meghana came to engineering, and this is what happened, and I love it.
Awesome. I'm glad you talk about. Okay, number one, I'm like you're just like such a huge fan of who you are. like like we're friends outside of this professional setting, but in the professional setting, I'm like, oh my gosh, Meghana, I'm like swooning over how amazing you are. Um, yes, I'm also with Jade. Oh, totally. You have my vote. You're not even running yet, but you have my vote. Um, I I have this one last question, which is advice for students first starting their engineering career. We have quite a few first years in our club, and I know that Nicole Hartley has been giving divvy shout outs to all of her first year students. So, what is your advice for them?
Oh my goodness. This is actually, it's a timely question because I am assisting Nicole Hartley in the sense that I signed up to be an Eng 100 mentor, which has been incredibly fun and very eye-opening for me because being asked questions like, what would you do differently? What advice do you have? I feel like my answer changes every time because there's so much that I wish I could tell a younger Meghana. And I'm so glad that I'm able to suggest to younger folks. But the biggest piece of advice that I really stand behind is don't compare yourself to anyone else. I think that comparison really does steal happiness. It's it's tough because in university you're around people who are of similar age demographic. We're so used to going through school from K to 12 and comparing ourselves to our classmates and being compared to our classmates, but in university everything changes because people are in such different places in life. Some people have gone through a whole life and have decided to go to university after that. Some people have family obligations. Some people have a different home life than you have. Some people are working during school. Some people are going to school for different reasons than other people, and it's just too hard to get through a university degree if you are trying to compare yourself to the person next to you. Each of our journeys is very individual and very different, and university is unfortunately competitive in the sense that the way that the grading system is often compares people, but do your best for what you can give, recognizing that everyone has different sets of skills, everyone is dealing with different things, everyone is going through different life experiences and all trying to do the same school program together. So don't compare yourself to the person next to you. You do your best for what you can do, and make your journey your own. It is truly yours to handle. So no matter what you do, don't do something because someone else does it. Do it because it's something that you want to do, or it's something that would make you happy, or it's something that you can personally get behind. Because I know that I spent a lot of time in university comparing myself to the person next to me. And we had different lives. We're different people. So why is that fair? It wasn't. It wasn't fair of me to try to do that. So I try to tell people as much as I can, don't compare yourself to the person next to you. We're all going through things differently. And I feel really like kindredly speaking this to you, Jocelyn, because you had a very kind of like different route in engineering as well, and you've kind of had your own
Mhm.
journey. And I feel like it's very. I feel like, yeah, like don't compare yourself to the person next to you. That's my like one big piece of advice. If I can give one more piece of advice
Oh,
to any
absolutely.
who's starting an engineering degree, or anyone who is thinking of doing any other type of degree, or just like doing something in your life that it might be like challenging and new and different, be kind to yourself because we're all learning, each and every one of us. I know that if you saw one of your really good friends beating themselves up because something didn't go well or something didn't go right, and you would probably speak really kind words to them. You'd tell them that they're doing their best and they can get through it. And I just want to remind people to say those words to themselves once in a while. And I need to say those words to myself too. Like, here I am. It's very, very easy for me to speak to you and into a camera and to other folks who are in their first year of engineering and tell them to be kind to themselves. But I don't take that advice all the time, and I really should. Yeah, be gentle on yourself, especially right now. Folks who are doing university or doing whatever you're doing in a global pandemic, take care of yourself, and really give yourself kudos for doing whatever you are doing during a global pandemic and for getting through. So that's like my one other piece of advice. Just be kind to yourself. Be kind to the people around you too, because you don't know what they're going through.
Yeah, that's amazing advice, especially for anyone right now. So I guess shout out to everyone out there. You're doing an amazing job. Be kind to yourself. I believe in you. We believe in you. And things are going to be good. So that wraps up all the questions that we have for you. I do want to open up the time for audience questions. So if anyone has questions, feel free to unmute or to type it in the chat. Yeah.
Yay, I'd love to hear your questions if you do have questions. If you do feel shy about speaking, yeah, feel free to throw it in the chat.
I mean, this isn't a question, but I just have to applaud you. You speak very, very nicely and very confidently. And I'm right now a Divi member, and I have to say your club had a really, really big impact for me in my first year of engineering, when I felt like I truly just didn't belong in such a masculine space. And I wasn't a part of the club then, but just the fact that I knew that it existed helped me feel like I belonged in this space and that like I did deserve to be in the program. So thank you so much for taking the work for making this club, and know that like you are making like a huge difference for so many engineering students right now.
Oh my gosh, Christina, those words like really, really warm my heart. I want to really applaud you for continuing through, and I'm glad that Divi could kind of be like a little bit of a beacon of hope for people who felt like they didn't really belong. Just the presence of that type of group shows that, we're making progress, and thank you for your kind words. I will say, like, the confidence in speaking truly comes from a lot of practice. Jocelyn knows this because Jocelyn has seen me do interviews and where I completely fumble and ramble. And I did one last year or the year before for International Women's Day. And Jocelyn,
Yes.
I was so rambly. It was, yeah. So it comes from a lot of practice, and also just being very, very passionate about this topic. Like, the words come easily because speaking from the heart, as cliche as that sounds.
We also have a comment. This was such an amazing session. I loved hearing your story, Meghana, and resonated with a lot of what you've said. It was so wonderful to hear the things I've been thinking actually said out loud.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad that we are on the same wavelength, and I'm glad that I can be that validation for the thoughts that you've had. And this is exciting because if you're thinking these things too, that means that one day when you're speaking this, some other person's going to be like, wow, I'm so glad that they said that, and they're thinking those things too. So the more we think about these things, and the more we talk about these things, the more normalized it becomes, these conversations about why diversity and inclusion and equity are so important. And so thank you for coming to the session and for attending. I'm glad that this all resonated with you.
Awesome.
Yeah,
and as a...
Oh.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, same as what everyone else has said before. Sorry, someone's calling in the background. Yeah, this was just such an awesome conversation, and you obviously couldn't see me, but I was just nodding along to like everything you were saying, and just I loved your perspective of marrying your community involvement and building community and the social aspect with the engineering aspect. I think something that people don't talk about or think about as often as they should. And then also, yeah, thank you for creating Divi. I only joined this past summer, but even so far, it's just brought me a lot of joy. So thank you.
Thank you for the kind words, Jade. Thank you for also contributing to Divi. Again, I'm glad that this group can be a beacon of hope for people. I'm glad that it's like a positive presence in engineering, which is a really tough degree where it's easy to feel isolated and feel like, you know, you may not belong. And so I'm glad that this group exists. Again, I really need to hammer down that this was an idea from two of us, but it only came to fruition because of a large group of people. There are just like some really incredible people who I'm sure being a part of Divi, y'all know that when you put out a call for positive people to come together and bring their fantastic brains together and create progressive change, you get some really incredible people at the table. And that was exactly what happened. Was we had some incredible people at the table. So I can't stress enough that it was such a group effort.
Oh, I'm so happy that I get to introduce you to some of our current team members, because I was so scared when when the pandemic hit. I'm like, oh my gosh, Divi is gonna die. It hasn't died. We're thriving.
All I see is thriving. And in the fact that y'all can put on sessions like this in the middle of, I can't stress it enough, like in the middle of like a global crisis where a lot of people are feeling isolated and you're finding new ways to connect with people, to keep the membership going, even virtually. I applaud you for that, because it takes a lot of energy. What like a lot of folks don't understand is organizing is one of the most energy intensive things that you can do. Organizing people, organizing events. So I applaud you for continuing to keep it up through this hard time where people do need this type of these sessions and this type of effort. So y'all are doing amazing.
Awesome. And just one last thing before we close off. I am so happy to hear your advice of not comparing yourself to others and to be kind to yourself, because personally, these past couple weeks have been very difficult. It was the end of one chapter and I'm going to be starting a next. And I just feel like I'm in this weird in-between zone where I don't really know what I'm doing, but just hearing those words from you and being reminded that I have to be kind to myself is just the best advice that anyone needs right now. So thank you again.
I'm so glad. I'll say it to you and you say it to me, and then the world will just become kinder.
Exactly. So that wraps up our session for our guest speaker series with the lovely Meghana Valupadas. This is what an engineer looks like. Thank you for tuning in. I'm going to stop the recording now, but if any of you just feel like chit-chatting for a little bit, I'm totally down. All right. Bye, everyone. Take care.